Assalamu alaikum and welcome, Shahnaaz. Shahnaaz is joining us via StreamYard. Um, it's such a pleasure to have you on with us this morning. Welcome and Ramadan Kareem to you.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. It's an absolute pleasure to be speaking to you on the show. And Ramadan Kareem to you and to your family and loved ones and to all of the viewers or listeners. Inshallah, everybody's having a blessed Ramadan so far.
So, Shahnaaz, I've read up a bit about yourself, having grown up in Overport, specifically Durban. Um, and you've been the CEO for Penny Appeal for a while now, but take us through your journey in terms of, having studied what it is that, let's just start off with background and history. Let's find out a little bit about more about you.
So, as you mentioned, I'm born in Durban. I'm from Durban. I've lived here for most of my life, with a lot of travel in between Cape Town and Durban. In my professional career, I come from a very family orientated background. I think if we're talking in terms of the early start or the early days, it was schooling at Ridge Park College, and then I went on to Al Falah College, where I matriculated from. I then went off to study media and communications at UKZN. Um, I then opted to join the family business. And when I did, I continued with studies in business management because that was my focal area at the time. I was actually part of a retail chain store group. So I was quite blessed to be able to learn so much in the business area. And I focused primarily on marketing as well as human resources for the group. So a lot of fun, a lot of learning that happened in those formative years. And then I found myself, seeking other opportunities in terms of something that challenged me a bit more, something that would be a bit more meaningful. I basically wanted a deeper connection on some level. Having worked in retail and worked, it's a bit of a corporate environment and it's very
Sure.
fast paced. Yeah, very fast paced. And I found myself thinking, okay, there's got to be something with a little bit more meaning. And so I then opted to volunteer back then for SANZAF here in Durban. Initially, it was to assist in terms of the Employment Bureau, which focused on providing unemployed individuals from SANZAF with employment opportunities. And I did that, and somehow I found myself then being offered a job to work for them. And somehow I ended up spending at least 3 to 4 years, possibly close to 5, with
Mm-hmm.
SANZAF. That's where my journey in the NGO and humanitarian sector started.
And did you find that, well, it's a rhetorical question. Did you find that once you went into that field after being in business, in corporate, etc., that it did give you that sense of fulfillment that you were looking for?
Undoubtedly, if I can just share with you the actual story about how that came about, it was so
Sure.
uncanny. So I'd left the retail world, right, in seek of obviously thinking, okay, maybe I'm going to be studying, maybe I'm going to be looking for something else, but I just needed a bit of a break. And I was listening to the radio one day, and there were two ladies who were chatting about, SANZAF in Durban and all of the development opportunities that they had in terms of skills and helping people. And they concluded the interview by saying, we're always looking for volunteers to come and assist us and spend time and, give off your skills and capacity. And I thought, well, hey, here's a really great volunteer opportunity. It's going to help me pass some time, and it's also going to help me decide what I want to do. So I called in the very next day to SANZAF, and they were more curious about, but where did you hear this interview? And I was like, on the radio. And apparently, that interview had been recorded at least 6 months earlier, aired 6 months earlier. But I
Oh, wow.
presume the radio station needed a filler or a gap
Right,
filler.
right,
And so they replayed it, and I happened to be stirring a pot in the kitchen,
right.
hearing this interview. And it didn't strike me at the time because obviously, firstly, I was a lot younger, and we don't necessarily join the dots when we're that younger. And, I then realize now in retrospect that, it was Allah Ta'ala's plan, say what we want. I mean, what are the chances of hearing a pre-recorded interview, asking
Absolutely.
for volunteers to join? And that started off my journey. It was a very, it actually, it's something I really identified with. I'd always been drawn to this type of work. I had wanted to actually do social work when I finished matric, but I opted for media and communications instead. But always, I think identifying with people's struggles, helping people, being somebody who understands the struggles of people, especially here in our country first, it's always something that's been really close to my heart.
Right. Well, I just want to say that we always think that repeating a show is it really worth doing it again?
It's
Well,
worth
now it's definitely worth it. So
it.
yeah, that's great. When one asks for something, when there's a calling, a type of calling that you have, a soul calling, if you like, then it happens. The universe then answers. Allah Ta'ala definitely works in his mysterious ways and plans. And I think here you are. So now we're talking about the CEO of Penny Appeal. Now, before we move into how you've actually got involved with that, because I see there's the UK Penny Appeal, which operates in 6 countries. So is that where your journey started, or did you independently start with Penny Appeal? South
So,
Africa.
specifically related to Penny Appeal South Africa, I was actually based at my first love in terms of a job, which is I worked for Islamic Relief South Africa for close on to a decade, for close on to 10 years.
And what
And
was your title? Sorry, Shahnaaz. What was your title?
I came into Islamic Relief actually as a marketing officer. I was a marketing
Right.
officer and, doing events and marketing and all of the nice fun stuff. And then as things usually, go, the organization in itself was going through the years a lot of changes. There was a lot more demand for different things to be done. So in my tenure at Islamic Relief South Africa, I was started off as marketing officer. I went into fundraising. I went into programs. I then went into developing and starting up the human resources department. I was focused a lot on operations in Durban here. And then I took up a national role at Islamic Relief, which was human resources for the entire organization, as well as assisting in terms of operations where required, part of the management team. And then in my final 2 years, I had then taken on the role of interim country director, in the absence of our CEO at the time, who could not be CEO at the time due to some personal circumstances. So I stepped in as acting country director for 2 terms. And yeah, I think about a year later, I got a phone call from some colleagues from Islamic Relief in UK, and they had mentioned that there's this new organization coming, and would I mind speaking to them? They want some context around the South African climate, around what South Africa like. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm too busy for these chit chats. What's going on. And I did meet with them, and we had a brief chat, and they just needed to understand the context behind how does South Africa work, and it was a nice coffee catch up. And off they went on their way, and I went back to work, and we're always so busy and caught up with our lives. About 6 months later, I was contacted to say that Penny Appeal wanted to open up in South Africa, or they were expanding, and would I be keen on joining the team? And I was like, no, I'm fine, I'm busy, I don't have time for any of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I had met with the founder, Adim Yunus, who's a young professional, based in UK. And I had met with him, and he had said, think about it. You should think about joining us. And I think in terms of where I was at that stage in my life, there comes a time, especially after almost a decade, 10 years with one
Mm-hmm.
entity, you think to yourself, what's next? And that's very much my character. I continuously need a challenge to keep me grounded or keep me busy. And I found myself thinking, what next? Where else can I be of benefit and assistance? Is there something else? And for some reason, I found myself saying, okay, we're going to give this a try. So initially, there was there was nothing in South Africa. It was an absolute startup. Nazir Jamal, who some people may know, was involved heavily in Al Ansar Radio. His father was Riaz Jamal, who's passed on. May Allah have mercy on him and grant him Jannah. But also very active in communities and in charitable work. So Nazir, brought in the concept, reached out to me. We came on board, and we literally, I was responsible for establishing the South Africa office because there was nothing here. So starting it up as a startup, I think that was the most exciting thing. It's a startup, right. Brand new. It's something exciting, something that you can go out there and really, really have the opportunity to make good change, meaningful change, transform lives. And of course, with the intention always of pleasing our Creator, for Him and by Him. That's what I always say.
Absolutely. After the break, we find out a bit more about your time at Islamic Relief and what your challenges were.
Sure.
Droplets of gold inspires precious design. Platinum bursts with intricate freshness, and every pure diamond becomes more than just a girl's best friend. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, where timeless dreams become a reality. Come to us. We tailor-make designer gold, platinum, and diamond jewelry. Trade in or remodel your old gold. Clad yourself with classy name-branded watches. We offer insurance valuation and free zakat calculation. Visit us at 534 Ridge Road, Overport, or call 031 208 9142. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, manufacturers of fine gold and diamond jewelry.
Southern Africa Dawah Network is a non-profit organization striving to uplift the disadvantaged and empowering through education and dawah. Donate to the SADN centers, the M.A. Motala Islamic Center, as well as our Islamic centers in Amoti, Imtalumi, Botshabelo and Castile. Donate your zakat and lillah today. Contact Faruk Sheikh 076-321-0650, Yusuf Mohammadi 072-259-3457, or the SADN head office 031 304 8000. Our account, Standard Bank, account number 050-856-294 for your zakat, or 050-879-790 for your lillah. Dawah through education, education through dawah, the Southern Africa Dawah Network.
Freedom Stationery supply Marlin and Marlin Kids pens to me and my school friends. They supply just about everything we need to help us get a better education. From books to files to rulers. In fact, any any accessory we need. Freedom Stationery. Education for the nation. What does accessory mean?
With so many investment options today, it's only natural that you might feel a little confused which route to take. Should I buy shares or should I invest in gold bullion? Randery Jewelers now brings you the Zahab coin, an alternative to the Kruger Rand. The Zahab coin, a solid wealth protector in its purest form of 24-karat gold, is the safest way to protect your wealth. So don't just sit there and watch your paper money depreciate. Change to gold. Call Randery Jewelers now at 031 202 4701 or visit www.rjcoin.co.za, situated at 151 Essenwood Road, Musgrave, Durban. Randery Jewelers, the family name you can trust.
After 11 years, Syria remains the world's largest refugee crisis.
We didn't flee from Assad just to come and die here.
More than 6.8 million Syrians have been forced to flee their country since 2011.
All of my country destroyed now, and I fear about my children.
And another 6.9 million remain internally displaced.
Our condition is very bad. We have no proper tents, nor a proper living. I have 10 children and we do not get any aid.
The vast majority, approximately 5.2 million refugees, have found refuge in neighboring countries such as Turkey, Lebanon and Jordan. Penny Appeal South Africa has been distributing hot meals and food parcels to food insecure families and provided mobile housing to those in need. Your donation, no matter how small, can make a big difference. Visit our website www.pennyappeal.org.za or call us on 031 110 0573. Penny Appeal South Africa. Small change, big difference.
Salam Media, your spiritual companion this Ramadan.
On our profile interview this morning, we are with Shahnaaz Paruk. She was born to a family in the clothing manufacturing industry. She received her early education at the Ridge Park College before going on to the Lockhart Islamic School, where she matriculated. She went to university to study media and communications before joining the family business in the marketing and human resource department. Next came the Gordon Institute of Business Science. She then decided that she wanted to be of service to the community and joined SENSEF, where she worked for a few years before moving to Islamic Relief South Africa. Amongst the projects she worked on at SENSEF was the organization's development of skills for individuals so that they could hold down sustainable jobs. And at Islamic Relief, she was responsible for multiple roles during her tenure at the organization. She is now the CEO of Penny Appeal South Africa. You've heard from her in the first part of our discussion with her, with Shahnaaz, on what her journey's been like. But, it sounds as if just moving into something that's fulfilling and serving humanity is something we all have an innate desire to do. But for someone to have carried it out and used her skills, what I find very interesting is that she studied media and communications and went on to a business school as well. And all of these skills then eventually got honed into what she is currently doing. Before the break, we asked about Islamic Relief and the challenges there. The reason I asked that question, Shahnaaz, is because, when you say you've had this multiple roles to fulfill, and you were responsible for this, it must have been, yes, like you said, highly, fulfilling, exciting, but I'm sure it came with its challenges. What did you find most difficult during that time?
I think for me, the most difficult thing was balance, balance. We want to do things and we want excellence in everything that we do, and we want to be able to make sure we get the best possible results. And so we tend to, or myself, I tend to drive myself that much harder to make sure that, things get done. And I think that came at the cost of me not balancing my life, things like health, etc. The odd part about it, though, Sister Najma, is that you don't realize it when you're in it. You just
Right.
you go with it. You go with whatever's happening. You take things as they come. You put out fires where needed. You make nice things happen. It only comes to you after that. Oh, that's what happened, and that's what we were doing. And sometimes when I sit back and I think about it, I don't think I'd want it any other way, to be honest. I'm a firm believer that, experience is the best teacher. And good experiences, bad experiences, all of them shape you. All of them have something for you to learn from. And so I think it's the biggest challenge for me, I think, was just something more personal, that I found it difficult to balance life. But like I said, I can't see it working out any other way. I can't see any other way that we would have done close on to 10 years with them, with Islamic Relief, unless all of these experiences shaped and gave me the knowledge that I had.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you mentioned balance and work-life balance. You have a family of your own, and I think that's where women relate a lot when it comes to our responsibilities as mothers and wives and as professionals.
100%. I can tell you that, being somebody who's so involved with family, I live with my parents, and I have a brother and sister, both of whom are married. I'm unmarried, but I have 7 between my siblings. There's 7 little ones, so I call them little monkeys, that I have, who could quite literally be my own children. There's 4 girls and it's 3 girls and 4 boys. See, I can't even remember it. But alhamdulillah, for those blessings. And it really keeps me grounded. But even with that being said, I think that most people in today's world tend to grapple with the idea of balance, male and female. We know of instances somehow, if we just look into our families, if you think about your nearest and dearest, off the top of your mind, you would already have identified that father who's unavailable even when he comes home because his mind is still so preoccupied and still downloading. And of course, let's not forget the constant work from home sometimes, which, thanks to COVID, we all now know it's so easy to work from home, and bringing work home and having commitments on the work front, and then having to have personal commitments. For women, I think being able to, the pressure mounts, whether you're married or not. It's in terms of being the good daughter or being the good sister,
Right.
showing up at events and family events, showing up for functions, showing up for your parents if it means doing that. If you're married, showing up for your kids, for your children, being there, being present, being mindful of where you are. It is a huge challenge, I think, in today's day and age for those that hold down, employment. I suppose, being at home and being a mom, alhamdulillah, they're able to spend a lot more time with their children, but that too probably comes with its own set of challenges, running a household, etc. But balance, I think, is more about in anything we do, whether we're working, whether we're not working, and alhamdulillah, we're spending time at home. The balance needs to be about your mindset being clear and your mindset being balanced enough so that you have enough time for yourself and that you're grounded as a person. And I think also that you have enough time to honor the rights of those around you, because especially as Muslims, if you're a wife, you need to honor the rights of your husband. If you're a husband, you need to honor the rights of your wife, honor the rights of your children, honor the rights of your parents. As much as we say we have a right, others also have right over us Islamically. And I think, to be able to do that is a great form of not only ibadah, it's a great form of us being good Muslims. It's a great form of us being able to demonstrate balance and train ourselves to be balanced enough to give of that. And I think that if we master that, that's something really profound, which I think will fix a lot of the things that we are grappling with as a society today.
Having said that, how do you implement that in your work environment? Because you're a head of an organization. And I like what you said, and I'm sure there's a way of projecting that and implementing that in a sense.
Had you spoken to me at inception of Penny Appeal South Africa, I would never have been saying these words to you. Obviously those initial years of establishing a total startup, Penny Appeal South Africa, remember we're independently registered. And so with that being said, it means everything is independent of all the other offices. It's run independently. It has its own board. So it's literally, an entire outfit and an entire setup that needed to be created. Again, those initial years, while they seem a blur, I do again think that there were things that could have been balanced a lot easier. But again, in those early stages as a startup, you don't think about that because you're so eager to go out there and, do things and you want to push. Currently, it's better. I've had to learn actually how to balance things. I've had to trust myself enough to understand that it's okay to slow down sometimes where needed in my personal capacity. It's okay to be able to have personal goals and ambitions for myself. And I think that came at a stage where I found myself being ill quite a lot, quite often. Because remember, all through lockdown, all through COVID, we were active on the ground. All through, let's look at KZN, KZN unrest, looting, flooding. Yes. Whatever it is, we were there. And we underestimate, I think, especially in this sector, all of us, everybody in this sector, I think sometimes if you're out there at ground zero, we underestimate the impact it has on us. We don't realize what we're doing because our mind is so conditioned to doing. We don't realize what we're absorbing. You're meeting with people, you're engaging with people. our trip to Syria, when people asked me how it was, the first thing that I said in my mind before I answered was, I wasn't prepared. I should have prepared my mind better to receive what was coming my way, because obviously the business function in the mind says, okay, we've got everything sorted, the things are going to be planned, but what meets you at face value and
Yes.
what you're receiving is totally different. And there were a lot of turning points for me, coming back to the wellness aspect, where I had to tell myself, if Shahnaaz is not okay,
Yes.
Penny Appeal is not going to be okay, and that is not a clever thing to do. It's not coming from a space of I'm the be all and end all. It's coming from a
Yes.
space
Yes.
of, you took on this amana, right? You took on this responsibility. You also need to be responsible to yourself and honor yourself enough to take care of yourself and start having balance. So it's been better, alhamdulillah, and I think things have been going pretty much okay. Again, lots of learning curves that have come our way as a team collectively. But it's been good, and we're learning a lot more about balance. I think even people in general are now, taking the time to invest in themselves in whichever way that they feel they want to, because we're now understanding as a society that we have our thresholds, we have our limits, and we have to be responsible for the bodies and the minds that Allah Ta'ala has given us, especially if you've got other people looking to you, to fulfill a purpose in their lives.
Right. I'm so interested in knowing about how you've actually grounded yourself as a human being, serving humanity, in terms of the psychological and emotional impact that you talk about, because that's what I'm guessing happened, and you had this maybe kind of a culture shock. So it's not all that rosy. In terms of where you sit, it's looked upon as that. And I think we can talk more about that after this break.
At Sentio, our Invest for Good philosophy is based on a genuine desire to use our investment skills for the benefit of broader society by investing responsibly, giving charitably, and developing talent that will transform the investment industry. Visit www.sentio-capital.com for more information about our Sharia investment products and start saving with us today. Sentio Capital. Invest for good. Sentio Capital Management is an authorized financial services provider.
These days, I'm more health conscious than ever. So tonight it's stir fry for dinner, cooked in healthy Helios pure sunflower cooking oil. Helios is pure sunflower goodness, packed with omega-6. That's good for your heart, and is approved as part of the Heart and Stroke Foundation eating plan. Dinner's ready! Helios, pure sunflower cooking oil. A healthy family is a happy one.
Send food and send kindness to those who have lost their homes and have been plunged into poverty. For those who are a meal away from starvation, a food parcel means an entire family can eat this Ramadan. That's the power of food. Donate now to Islamic Relief.
Salam Media, your spiritual companion this Ramadan.
We're speaking to our very special guest in our profile interview on Mid Morning Talk with Najma Kota. I'll be with you up until 1 o'clock today. We're speaking to Shahnaaz Paruk. She is the CEO and leads the Team Orange that comprises 5 full-time staff members with whom she traverses the country implementing various projects. Now, talking about the various projects and how important they are in terms of the ethos of Penny Appeal, we also spoke about how Shahnaaz manages to maintain a balance in terms of her emotional well-being, her psychological well-being, and how to cope, in fact, with carrying out all of those tasks. Shahnaaz, are you with us? I can't hear Shahnaaz. Shahnaaz not with us. Let me just check. So as we continue with the interview, there you go. Shahnaaz is with us. Sorry, Shahnaaz, I think we had a slight technical hitch there. Thank you so much for your patience. All right. As I was saying, talking about your emotional and psychological well-being in managing the projects that you undertake.
There is training that goes into it. I can say that to you, that you learn to train your mindset in terms of being out in the field, as we refer to it. You obviously also learn about debriefing. There's a lot of debriefing that takes place. It's something we offer to all our staff and employees. Sometimes if we're taking volunteers into the field with us and it is a bit of a heavy background, we ensure that there's debriefing that's offered to them. But more than that, just in terms of myself, I think it comes with experience. It comes with knowing your work, basically, or knowing what you're in for when you're visiting certain places or individuals, when you're learning about certain situations of communities that we're serving. It comes with being able to, again, the word balance that empathy with being able to, or balancing the sympathy you may have to be empathetic, where you're able to move yourself enough to do something about it. And I think that is something that we underestimate. Being able to do something about it moves us to action, which means we feel that we're able to do something about it. And I think with that, that's what creates the balance. In terms of emotional and what we see out there, obviously when we visit, there's different faces of poverty everywhere we go, right? If you talk about poverty in South Africa, it's different compared to, example, Somalia, where children are literally dying of starvation because there's no food. If we look at the children and the adults and the families in Syria, or Syrian refugees who are residing on the borders of Amman, who are residing, within the Turkish borders, their challenges are very much more difficult, but it is also a form of them being in need. The difficulties that they face may be different, but their situations are the same, that they are in need, to be able to access certain resources that they want. On the most recent trip, I think, to Jordan, what happened to us in the Syrian camps was we were faced with a very harsh winter. And we saw a lot of children who had no food. We saw a lot of children who had no shoes. We saw children that were not adequately kitted out to brave that winter. We'd gotten there just after snowfall. And so we just saw the tail end of winter, which is probably the equivalent to what Johannesburg winters are, when they drop to 1 and -1. The highest temperature we had when we were there was 2 degrees Celsius. And it really impacted me to the extent that I couldn't do too many interviews like I normally would on my first trip, because it was just too much for me. And so, being able to prepare yourself mentally to understand that Allah Ta'ala puts people in situations and puts people with the necessary skills to be able to help those in need, and spread the message. I think that's really important. And I think also being able to renew your intention. It's something I say to my staff all the time. My team knows it's something I say all the time. Renew your intention. We renew our intention in the middle of something, towards the end. We look at how we can do better. And all of these are literally coping mechanisms to emotionally and mentally prepare us in terms of the work that we do and how we can be the best. It's one thing to continue doing what you're doing all the time, which is fantastic. And I always salute my team, my volunteers, and obviously those who are doing similar work. But I think what's really important is being able to better yourself as you go along, because it's not just bettering yourself or your team or your strategy. It's got nothing to do with that. You're actually putting a better service forward. And in this case, it's service to mankind and service to
Right.
humanity. So
Right.
definitely,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. When one speaks of your projects like food security, clean water, education, healthcare, as well as protection of vulnerable children and women,
Mhm.
um, all of them are important. If you reach out,
Oh,
how do you in fact, find that niche and say this is the focus? So, how do you do that?
it's really difficult. It really, really is. Especially we're so headstrong about being proudly South African. Everything you do, you'll see us, pitching the point of it's Penny Appeal South Africa. We're proudly
Mm,
South African. South African. We're
mm,
confidently Muslim, proudly South African. You'll hear all of these terms because we really
mm,
mean it.
mm,
And when we look at the challenges our communities face, again, it's
mm.
so different because South
Right.
Africa being South Africa and being so diverse,
Mm-hmm.
um, different communities, different challenges. We do know that we have a selection or a portfolio of themes that we work in. Food security being one of them, and under that, there's so much under it: food packs, food vouchers, hot meals, food gardens, or teaching people how to grow their own food. Breakfast club for kids in schools, and then if we go to care for orphans and vulnerable children, that's another huge component of what we do.
Yeah.
We also do water and sanitation. So what we've actually done is looked at communities. What are the main things that affect communities? What is it that makes them not being able to access their basic human rights in a dignified approach? And from there,
Right.
we've tailored, there are strategies and there are assessments that are used in our industry to determine what is required, what is the best way towards it. Is it viable to do it this way or not? All of that is applied. It's very much a thought process, very much being able to use the tools that we need to in our industry to give off the best possible service we can. So if you ask me what's important, everything's important to
Absolutely.
everyone in
Yeah.
different parts of the countries we work in.
Right.
Can we do it? We really try. Do we need to do it? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm. What strikes me as very, very interesting is that there are organizations, alhamdulillah, so many, South African
Mhm.
based, that have their footprint here, that have their footprint elsewhere in the world. And yet, there's still penny appeal that appeals to the needy and, of course, the ones who want to contribute towards your humanitarian work. How has that impacted on, the way you function as an organization?
I personally believe that the entire humanitarian and NGO sector here in South Africa um, needs to rethink the way we do our work and the way we interact and network with each other. Speaking from a perspective of global knowledge and working experience with global NGOs, I think it's so much different out there. There
Mm.
are entities that leverage of skills and knowledge and experience of other entities. There are the sharing of projects, etc. I think, when Penny Appeal South Africa chose to open its doors, it wasn't because we felt that we needed to go out and solicit funds for projects. I mean, that's really hard work. Going
Yeah.
to people and saying to them, this is what we're doing, having doors shut on your face, which was a very regular occurrence in our early days, doors closed on your face, people not wanting to engage with you or work with you or speak to you, being a female in a leadership role didn't really help the situation
I'm sure.
back then. And then we had to depersonalize it and say, well, look, it's about trust, right? You've got to win the trust of people, and that's all we've been doing ever since. We let our work speak for itself. We leave
Okay.
everything aside, just let the work speak for itself. So, is there a need for other entities? I think that if everybody could do everything, we wouldn't have a poverty issue or an inequality issue in South Africa or anywhere in the world for that matter. We think that the South African charity sector is really overcrowded. If you look at it globally, it's worse. If you look at the UK, it's 100 times worse. So I think that because there's a lack of coordination, and of no fault of anybody's for that matter, mind you, It's just how it is. Because there's a lack of coordination, because there's a lack of networking, sharing of information, shared skills, it's obviously going to lead to people working in silos and working in different areas and trying to assist those wherever they best can. And may Allah Ta'ala accept from them. It's always my intention, and I always say to my team that this is not a competition. And I say this to donors, and I say this to other people in organizations when I feel like they're getting the wrong message. It's not a competition. We're dealing with human lives here. We're dealing with children. We're dealing with really relative, pertinent matters. As much as we apply our mindsets to business principles, we apply it to the work we do, it does not mean that we lose the human element of what we do. It means we become a lot more aware of the role that we have to provide the service. And again, I'm a firm believer that what is meant for you will always come to you, and that the Almighty guides, who He wants to be able to do this type of work. So there will always be a need, especially here at home, for humanitarian organizations and NPOs. I'm a huge fan of community-based smaller organizations. We love working with them. I do believe that teamwork is vital in this industry. And I do believe that trained and skilled individuals and professionals are really, really required in order to be the most impactful. It's one thing, like you mentioned earlier, you could be doing something the same way for 50 years, and alhamdulillah, you'll be doing things. But imagine if things were improved and you could reach a whole lot more. That is a lot more impactful. So I think everybody has their place. And I think it's a natural progression of the industry if those that may not have a place for whatever reason will eventually, not be in the same sector, not be able to do what they're doing effectively. But those that are able to contribute positively and make changes, regardless of, which organization or entity they are, I'm a firm believer that their cause will progress and that you will see the results. Ultimately, it's always the results that speak for themselves, regardless of all the other chit-chat that happens. It's about the people and it's about the results.
Indeed. And I like what you said about women in leadership role and how difficult that was or is or still can be. And I see you are passionate about women nurturing. And we also talk about your Ihata shelter for abused women and children in Cape Town. So let's just first delve into your personal experience of being a woman in a leadership role.
It was a very unexpected appointment to be appointed as CEO for Penny Appeal South Africa. Initially, I came on as chief of operations because, that's usually where the person lies to go around and get things done. And I think it was after a 6-month period, if I'm not mistaken, where it was pushed to chief executive officer. At that stage, there was no other female in a leadership position. And it just felt really daunting. It was really daunting, and then I had to tell myself, look, it's something new. It's going to be a lot more that's expected from you. So, heads down, and you just need to get the work done. It's been an amazing journey. I can tell you that. It's been really, alhamdulillah, I give so much of thanks, and I really make so much of shukr for being able to be in this position and experience this. Yes, initially in those early days, there were a lot of doors closed on our faces. I think just purely as a startup. People often are not too sure about things they don't know about, which is fair. I think we would have reacted the same way. But as it progressed and people, I would often go into meetings. We laughed about this the other day with some of my team members who are male. I would go into meetings and we would attend, certain donor interactions. And a lot of them would think that I'm the administrator or I'm, just somebody who's there to take minutes. And I'd let it go. I'd be like, I would go with it. I would just be that person that they thought I was. It's no problem, because I realize it's really no problem. Okay, even if the title is administrator, it's okay.
Yeah. Isn't that an interesting perception that people have?
It is. I found it hugely interesting. And sometimes my colleagues would correct them and you just see these looks of, confusion, like what's happening here? And, and I think once we started doing a lot more around it and people got to know us and they realized it, I think it's been met a lot better. I see there's a lot more appointments of females in leadership positions, which I'm thrilled to see. But I also do think it's a very fine line between some people perceiving it as being totally feminist and then being a leader.
Right.
Leadership in itself is not, it's not something that's male or female. You're a leader whether you're male or female. There are certain
Correct.
things you have to do. You have to do the right thing. You have to lead with integrity. You are responsible for so much, for so many lives. In this sector, you're accountable for so much more, not only to the people, but you're accountable to your creator. So, whether you're male or
Absolutely.
female is irrelevant. Again, it's down to what you're able to do. But being a female, I think, makes it a bit nicer because we're able to understand. We tend to empathize a lot more. We tend to want to, always be on the side of being able to give more, to help more. We listen more. So I think it's good. It's been a great journey, like I mentioned. And I do think that if you speak about females in leadership positions or not, I am passionate about female empowerment and youth empowerment. I think specifically about empowering females, especially those that come from backgrounds where they've lost their power or where they may not have the best opportunity at accessing a good life. I think we owe it to our youth for them to be able to know that they have the choice. It's not
Right.
predetermined, that they they
Right.
can make the choice in terms of if it's going to be a good life or is it going to be a life that's going to be filled with turmoil.
What I find very admirable, Shahnaaz, is that we talk about this. It can be a dinner table discussion on how to empower the youth or empower women or empower the downtrodden, as it were. But to execute that and to make it happen, it's not an easy task, but it's amazing that it can be done, and you've done it. How?
There is still so much work to be done, Sister Najma. There's so much. We're literally just, touching the iceberg. And like I mentioned, we're always looking on ways to improve. But how do you do it is you just start. It's something I say to donors: give what you can with what you have when you can. I say to my team, start with what you have whenever you can, and use whatever you have at your disposal. So I think the important thing is to just start. We know that we have a very troubled country. We know that there are so many young people out there that need our help. We know that we have a troubled country in terms of femicide or in terms of gender-based violence. And I think now more than ever, there needs to be, a very loud voice that advocates for that. And so we want to be that voice. And again, it comes down to putting, matching those words and matching the advocacy with action. What are we actively doing about it? So we're really particular about all programs that we do need to have elements of advocacy. Example, our child sponsorship program, which sponsors close on to 200 plus children across Cape Town and Durban. As much as we say we're providing them with their basic needs and resources, because they're being sponsored, we make sure that there are elements of development included. Public speaking skills, being able to come together and access a variety of skills, teaching them about things like safe sex, HIV/AIDS, health and awareness. These are things that we don't tend to talk about, but things that are so relevant in our communities, things that are impacting our youth. And I think that being able to speak about it, for one, creates that notion that they're able to air their views and access help, and then being able to offer alternatives. Sporting tournaments, being able to offer sports as a recreation, being able to put up multi-purpose centers in vulnerable communities. These are things that are needed when it comes to youth, so that they have an alternative. We're not just saying, don't do this, don't go here. We're saying don't, but we're directing them to something else. Even with our madrasas, we ensure that there's opportunities for them to have things like fun days. We have an Orphan and Vulnerable Children's Fun Day. This Saturday that went by, alhamdulillah, the volunteers in Durban and some of the staff members hosted 60 children across 3 different underprivileged areas. They came together, they had iftar with us, there were games played, they were face painted. So, the thinking here is very much the same. To engage the youth, you have to understand the youth. We need to
Right.
understand the challenges they face. We need to be able to not just say, no, don't do this and do that. We need to be able to offer alternatives, healthy alternatives. It's not an overnight journey, it's an ongoing one, it's a constant battle. But I think, inshallah, if a lot more people start thinking this way, we're hoping that it will mend things. And just on that point, when we talk about if everyone starts thinking that way, part of the orphan sponsorship program we have is speaking to the guardians of these children. How do they cope? It's one
Right.
thing being subjected to poverty and not having enough, but now you've got the
Correct.
usual growing pains, quite literally. And so, teaching people again about values in our society. This is why we have things like mosque projects, building madrasas, building masjids. It's not just about yes, it is about the salah, and it is about spreading Islam and having children in madrasa. It's also about that masjid being the center of the community, where the
Correct.
soccer happens, where children can come and play if they need to, have coloring competitions. It's something to keep them busy and grounded. And that's something
Right.
we firmly advocate for.
Very quickly, as we round off, your Penny Appeal's philosophy is that of affordable charity. Now, Penny Appeal already appealed to me, as in terms of a name. Quickly, tell us what that's about.
So the concept of penny appeal, obviously, it does come from a British concept. There are partner offices who are independently registered in Canada, USA, South Africa, Australia. We all function independently from the UK. But I think the idea of pennies, in our case, is that when we think of charity, think of doing something, that's going to make an impact. We think it's got to be unanimous, effort or action. No. Our Creator looks at your intention to want to do good. So it doesn't matter how much you're donating. It matters that you're donating to make a difference. And so small change, big difference, making charity affordable and rewardable. A vast number of people, like I mentioned, want to do good. It's a matter of them being able to know that regardless of what you bring forward or regardless of what you donate, it's your intention that counts. And I think every little bit of it does count in terms of making a difference. So part of our thing was to make sure that everything we did made our charity something that was inclusive for people from all walks of life, from all religions for that matter, from all backgrounds, to be able to identify with it and for us to become, inshallah, a household brand, a household name. But more than that, I think the people behind it, for people to know us and understand that we are people that can be trusted and understand that we're here to deliver on results before everything else. And obviously for the intention of pleasing our Creator, nothing else.
And I was going to ask you, what adage do you live by? And I think you just answered that in your last sentence. So Alhamdulillah, may Allah grant you success in your endeavors and accept all of your efforts, inshallah. Thank you so much for spending this time with us and talking about your life a little bit, and also the work that Penny Appeal does and the position that you hold. May Allah make it easy. It's been an absolute pleasure. Jazakallah khair, Sister Shahnaaz.
Shukran for having me. It's been a pleasure. Enjoy the blessed month of Ramadan, inshallah.
Ameen.
And do remember myself and my team in your du'as, and hopefully we'll speak soon.
Will do, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Up next, we speak to Mumtaz Kaji. She is a counseling psychologist. We learn on how to aid people with personality disorders.